Founders have to add podcasts to their outreach strategy. Have a plan as to what you want from the podcast. What are the right podcasts for you? Podcasts should be on the top of your brand awareness and visibility list. If you want to do podcasts, one of the first things you can do is to
Amore Philip is the CEO and founder of Apples and Oranges Public Relations, a PR strategist, and an entrepreneur. She helps founders and brands leverage publicity to drive growth and authority. Featured in Inc., Fast Company, Forbes Advisor, and The Independent, Amore supports startups and companies generating over $250 million with powerful media strategies and thought leadership.
podcasts I see as a very personalized sort of medium. You're just talking and having a conversation, and people get to learn a lot about you. But you have to automate as much as possible because there's still some things that are just structurally are the same, principles and things like that. But the way people are going about business now, as opposed to 10 years ago, is completely different. And if you don't get with the program, you're going to be left behind. So automation is your friend.
How do you implement this for podcast? Amor, thank you so much for coming on Podcast Gurus. Can we maybe begin off with you quickly introducing yourself and explaining us what you do?
So yes, hi, how are you? My name is Amore Philip. I am a CEO and PR strategist here at Apples and Oranges Public Relations. And so I work with founders to help them better tell their story, whether that's in media, a TED Talk, in press, or them really expressing what it is that they do best. So in essence, PR and media placement.
So let's just jump straight in. Why should CEOs and founders be more visible in 2025, you think?
Oh, it's the most important time to be visible.
Now,
Why should
more than ever.
CEOs be visible? Because the more people see you, the more people hear you, the more they get familiar with you. They trust you, right? And it's like, for example, we have like some of the largest companies. You see the CEOs or the spokesperson in the news all the time. You hear about them. They're busy. They're talking about this. They're talking about that. And the reason why CEOs should really be visible is so that they can build trust with an audience, so that people can see who they are, hear from them, and just kind of, get to know what it is and the problems that they solve. So CEOs need to be talking, they need to be visible, whether they want to start with something like a LinkedIn and then branch out from there. But everything you can do to become more visible, I highly suggest that.
So why do the CEOs specifically need to be trusted by the audience? Why can't the rest of the company just do? Like, I don't know, company's page, for instance. Why is it important that the CEO or the founders, the C-suite, is under the spotlight?
So the CEO, it would depend on the business and what they do. So for example, let's say the CEO is a consultant, right? Or someone in the beauty industry. They want to show up to help people who like beauty solve problems. So they can do on their social media and they can give tips, right? It is important for the spokesperson of the company to be visible because there are people behind a company, right? And you can get as big as a Microsoft. Maybe you don't need to do it that much anymore. But the CEO should be visible, particularly based on the stage they're at and the type of product or service or industry that they're in. And then also, as the CEO becomes more visible, the company also becomes more recognizable.
That makes a lot of sense. So when you say CEO, it can also be other potential executive from the company. Basically, as much human exposure that we can give, the better from the company. Is that correct?
Yes. So the C-suite, let's say, or the
Yeah.
founder. For some companies, it's small and all they have is the founder as a spokesperson. Then as
Yeah.
you grow, you can have your CMO, you can have depending on what the conversation is. So yeah, for sure.
That makes sense. So can you talk to me a bit about content versus thought leadership in 2025? Like, why is it important to position yourself as a thought leader more than just doing content?
So as a thought leader, you own authority in that space, right? They look to hear from you when it's, on a specific topic or subject. Our content is a part of thought leadership. Thought leaders need to constantly put out content, whether that content is just sitting at your desk and just telling people 5 things they can do to save money. If you're an accountant, That's thought leadership. That's, you're helping people. You are giving people information. And the more information you give, the more you can help them solve problems, the more they will trust you, and eventually they will buy from you. So I do think that, thought leaders need content for sure, but just putting out content does not make you a thought leader per se, because you have to be putting out the right content that people need, and your content needs to solve some kind of a problem for whoever's listening.
And that makes sense. Ideally, your ideal clients, right? Or at least the industry as a whole. So, in your opinion, because anybody listening to us right now will have heard of AI, right, in some shape or form, what are those main challenges of building credibility, right, as a CEO, as a thought leader in your niche, in an heavily AI driven world? How do you do that?
Yes, so everybody is using AI, but how you use AI is what matters, right? So, for example, you can use AI to help you with ideas. You can use AI to help you come up with, something that you want to, some problem that you want to solve. So you can say, I solve XYZ problems. Give me some bullet points for content of things that I can say, Monday through Friday, etc. So I would say leverage AI to help you, leverage AI to maximize your resources, but don't use AI as a replacement for you and for what the things that you can offer. And yes, you're absolutely correct. People could spot it a mile away, because sometimes it doesn't sound like it doesn't sound like you, but then they say you could train it, right?
Yeah.
But as for me personally, I use AI to brainstorm, to come up with new ideas, to search what's a topic of discussion for the day. And for me, as a PR strategist, my content would be all about the problem that I saw, which would be awareness or visibility. So perhaps my content would be more around 5 things that a CEO can do to become more visible in 30 days, right? And I may say, step one, update your profiles. Step two, practice your pitch. Step three, and so on and so forth. So I wouldn't use AI for that, but I would probably use AI to ask them to give me some ideas as to how I could solve problems for CEOs who want to be more visible. And then I put my voice into that. So I think AI is a tool that we should use. We should embrace it, but then we should use it, to kind of help us along, but not as a replacement, because people can see that.
Okay. So that's crystal clear. What we love to do in this podcast is to tell the story behind it, right? So that said, Amor, can you give us a bit more of an understanding of like what's your background with Apples and Orange Public Relations, your transition right from architectural presentation to PR, the growth trajectory of your agency, which blew up in a very short period of time. Like, how did you manage all this? What led you to understand and practice PR that well to lead you to where you are now?
So how I got here, that's been a journey. I started my, let's say, professional career in fashion merchandising and theater. Those were my two main areas of study. And I also, as a secondary, I studied marketing as well. And so I spent my earlier college years, I did a couple years of college, and then, financially, I was like, oh my God. So I did that, and I worked in a lot of the higher end retail stores. I worked in the fashion space as well, in showrooms and things like that, and also with some of the New York Fashion Week shows. And then from there, maybe around 2004 or something like that, maybe 2006, or I think it was, I got an opportunity to interview for an architectural structural glass company. And what they did was they imported different types of design or structural glass that the architects would choose when they were building certain buildings. And so I got that opportunity, and I was really great at presenting to them like what they should use, here are your options. And the person that was handling PR at the time, I think went on maternity leave or was out for some reason. And so I got stuck doing some of those tasks. And so I did them rather well. But then about a year later after that, the company downsized. And so I said to myself, what am I going to do? So I called up some of my friends in the fashion space, the entertainment space, and I said, "Do you guys need any help? Can I help you plan some events? Do you need to find sponsors? Because I can call sponsors and do all these things." And so that's kind of how I started. I started freelancing. I built up a client base or a portfolio for 2 years. And then around 2010 is when I launched or I incorporated the agency. Since then, those last 15 years have been filled with lots of great experiences, lots of lessons learned. And today, I am really focusing on working with founders who want to leverage what I do and my expertise in their long term growth strategy so they can build their authority and build their businesses. And so, my day to day job is to, let's say it was you, right? And you are an expert at podcasting. And so, let's say one of the business publications, let's say it's a Business Insider, and they were talking about how C-suite, people in the C-suite or CEOs can better leverage podcasts in their brand awareness. You would be my client, so I would call you and I would say, "Hey, they're looking for a podcast expert to chime in on a segment about podcasting." And so I would pitch you as the best expert or source for that particular need based on your background, what you've done, and some of the wins that you've had, and how effective you can be in helping that journalist or that publication satisfy their audience. So, on a day to day basis, I'm pitching my clients to media. I'm building media lists. I'm building strategy. I am fixing problems for some clients where they've done things that they're not supposed to do online. And
Happens.
I've had the privilege of working across the government, tech sectors, as well as general B2B. And I've worked with clients from Australia to the UK as well. And now one of my most recent projects that I'm working on is a tech company that's based out of Latin M. And so that's how I got here. I just took a chance on myself. And instead of joining the unemployment line, I said, I'm going to join the call my friends line and see what opportunities they have. So I called a friend.
Yeah, build something on your. Hey, you made your PR network work, and it did, and
Yeah,
that's how it
I
done.
like that. Make your network work.
Exactly. So, what has been your experience with podcasts so far in all this, Amor? And obviously, what I'm interested in is understanding how we can leverage podcast for PR, right? You're on this podcast today. You've been on other podcasts as well. What's your perception of podcasts, and how does it intersect with PR?
I think podcasts are really great. It's a really great medium, depending on the client, also their personality and their comfort level. But I do think that podcasts are really great for founders because it helps audiences to get to know that person behind the brand. Podcasts I see as a very personalized sort of medium, right? You're just talking and having a conversation, and people get to learn a lot about you. I also think it can be effortless in terms of what needs to be done. So you just need to be prepared and you show up and you have a conversation. There's not much pre production that you need to do as a founder. And I also see podcasts probably as a not as a replacement, but as a great option to broadcast TV, right? I see podcasts as such, and I believe podcasts are really strong. Let's look at the election, the past US election. Podcasts played a great deal in the exposure for President Trump going on the Joe Rogan show and all these other podcasts that he's never heard of or never been on. And it really connected with even probably bigger audiences than your traditional mainstream. So I think podcasts are very powerful. Founders have to add podcasts to their outreach strategy and have a plan as to what you want from the podcast. What are the right podcasts for you and how you would add value to the podcast that is going to help the audience that's watching. So I would say as a founder, as a CEO, as a brand, Podcasts should be on the top of your brand awareness and visibility list.
So you're talking mainly guesting on podcasts, right? That's the impact that you can have. If you have a personality that's easy to interview, if you're well spoken, if you're somebody who will be easily talking about themselves, their company, basically creating that thought leadership content, I think it's a great tool for people to go as guests on podcasts. How about having your own podcast to develop PR? Is that something that you're exploring, that you're doing with your clients?
I have actually explored it for myself as well. And then I say to me, what do I have to talk about? What do I have
Or
to say?
more than you think.
I know, exactly. Exactly. Because there's people with nothing to say and they have podcasts and they're doing fine. So
Exactly.
with my clients, yes, I have explored podcasts as a part of their brand awareness strategy, especially for consultants. Like, for example, I have one friend or colleague, I should say, who is an accountant, and she has great, she leverages LinkedIn a lot, right? So she does videos on LinkedIn, but she is one person that has such a wealth of knowledge that I had recommended for her to start a podcast. But she saw it as adding additional, like task or work to her day-to-day plate that she didn't think she had time for. So I suggested there's many ways you can do podcasts. You can work with a podcast studio and you have your content and you can just go and record it and they will do all the things for you, right? And you will
Yeah.
just have the podcast to put up. Or if you're someone who have the time or really want to do it, you can, find out all the things that needs to be done and produce your own podcast. So I really highly suggest, depending on your area of expertise and a couple other things, I would say explore podcasts, even before you try to hire a PR person or you go to media. See if you yourself can start doing your own little podcasts and
Amen.
to connect with audiences. Because that might be the best option for you based on your resources and based on where you are.
Yeah.
That might make more sense.
No, 100%. And to double down on that, it has never been easier to launch a podcast. Like, it's never been easier. Literally, you can record with your iPhone or your phone, whatever you're using. With softwares now, you can get a pretty good audio, even if the recording is not fantastic to begin with. You just need a mic and ideally a camera because YouTube is becoming big and that allows for repurposing and so on. But you can just do audio and you will be fine and you will get going. You will see the benefits of it. You will get listened to by your industry, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have a very niche podcast, this is what happens. Who else will listen to a podcast on how to install pipes in big buildings? I don't know, just throwing something random out there. That's how it works. So, what would be in your experience, Amor, what would you recommend CEOs in terms of best practices to use podcast as a communication tool and most importantly, of course, a PR tool? What would you recommend CEOs?
So for best practices to leverage podcasts as a tool, I would say first, just be clear on what it is that you want to say. Be clear on the audience that you want to attract or that you want to serve. And then find the best, like you said, podcast solution for you and get started. I would say don't think too much about it, right? Just jump in because a lot of times we don't know what we can do until we do it. And so I would say for CEOs, best practices to know what you want to say. Start small. So let's say you're just once a week, 30 minutes, you're going to talk about cake baking because you're a great cake maker or what have you. And find a medium, find something that already like a riverside, right? And hop on, get on, try it out, test it out. And I would say just do it, just get started. And also, another best practice I would say is that watch some podcasts, right? Including this one. So, watch podcasts and see what it is that they're doing. How do they do things? What can you learn from that specific podcaster that you like? And, make it your own. So, best practices, find out the best podcast platforms that you can use, have something to say, and just get out there. Just put yourself out there.
I love that. I really, really love that. Like getting started is the most important. And then,
That's the hardest thing.
it's the hardest. But then you're set for success and you will get going, you will learn, you will get feedback. Every new episode will be 1, 2, 3, 4% incremental improvement and you get going. But that's the most important in my opinion. You have something to say if you're managing a company or if you're a CEO, and you can leverage podcasts with this. So something that you've been very strong at, Amore, is implementing structure, right? Frameworks, and basically building the infrastructure and systems to make a company work. So obviously, I'm interested into getting your take on those infrastructure and systems as a whole, but of course, how we can make the link with podcast to build the right system and infrastructure to make a successful PR effective podcast. What's your experience with this? Why is it so important in your opinion? And what have you done in that space?
My experience with infrastructure.
Infrastructure and systems, yes, within the company.
Yeah, so my experience with infrastructure, and I should do a podcast on that actually.
You
But my
should.
yes,
Wink,
my
wink.
infrastructure is I got to really appreciate and understand infrastructure the hard way, right? So when I started my business, I had no idea about infrastructure. I didn't know how a business worked. I just knew I wanted to be in public relations and help people plan experiences, say the right things, and be in front of the right audiences that's going to help them attract their ideal audience and help them to add value, right? And so I had no idea about how it was to run a business. I had what a moniker of a business plan. And so over the years, while I had some wins, I realized that there were a lot of internal issues. Like I could get the best client there is, but then am I set up internally to serve that client, to give them the best experience? And I had those times where I had great clients and they loved me, they stuck with me for a little while. And then sometimes it was really hard to serve them because I didn't have certain systems and structure in place to follow. Nothing works without systems, nothing works without structure. All buildings have structure. Anything that is of importance and of significance has a foundation. And even us, right? We are a system, right? We are breathing, the heart's beating. That's a whole system. If something goes missing, right, the system doesn't work. But we don't think about it that way.
Much less efficiently, at least. That is for
Yes.
sure.
And so my experience with systems is that probably into my 10th year, I realized I got to do something if I really want to grow. I need to put in place some a good infrastructure like the CRMs, the processes, process manuals, find out the best CRM or project management software or combination that is going to help me give my clients better experience, help me to best manage projects, and help me to really serve, right? And without those things, I can't. And so I set out on my journey to find the best software to use. I found that. I found the best consultant who was an expert on that software. And that took me a while. A lot of great CRM systems and a lot of great infrastructure systems for small businesses, or what I like to call a small business infrastructure or small business operating system. There's some of them that are out of, you can just sign up and within 30 days you're up and running. But there are a lot of them, the ones that are going to help you scale and grow, you need to put some efforts and resources into them, right? You need to build it out, customize it the way you want it. And then you need someone to help you with that. But once you have those systems and process in place, oh my God, it's like butter. I can tell you, like, one of my goals too, I want to just interject, is that I wanted to be able to run my business from my cell phone. That's one of my goals.
That's nice.
Yeah, I want to travel more. And so sometimes now when I'm traveling, there's certain things that I could do. I could take a phone call, I can maybe do a Zoom call, but then they would say, okay, can you send us a proposal? And then I'm like, okay, I got to wait till I get back to my computer so I could type up the proposal and do all this stuff. I need to assign it to somebody, etc. And so some things will be delayed. I'm like, that's not good. You can't run a business like that. And over the last couple years, I've been really working on infrastructure and systems. But right now, at this moment, I can, if I'm traveling right now, I can have a call with a potential client, but I use my laptop or my phone. Let's say my phone. I can present to them because I have it set up that way. As soon as I'm done presenting to them and they want a proposal, I just hit one button and the proposal goes to whomever needs to prepare it. They then hit a button because it's already pre-prepared and it will fill in all the information that we talked about based on my call. And then they will get that. In 24 hours, I can do my consult, I can prepare a proposal, I can get it to the client, and then I could follow up with them the next day, right? And then let's say they want to move forward. In that proposal, there's a button that they hit that takes them to filling out their information, to the feedback form or to the onboarding form, and to the payment. And once they're done with that, a project is automatically set up. People are assigned, the tasks are assigned, and their first appointment is created. I could do all of that while running through the airport now because I've spent the last 2 years working on infrastructure. It is so powerful. You cannot scale and grow without it. If you're trying to do that, forget about it. So figure out the problems that you're having in your company and find the right solution or the right person or company to help you and get that done if you really want to build something, if you want to build a legacy. And most importantly, I want to change the trajectory of my family. Those are the reasons why I do things. I put resources into things. So you can't grow without a system, processes, or good infrastructure. Like a house on sand, you will fall.
This is music to my ears. So how do you implement this for podcast, in your opinion, Amor?
Yes. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Love that. How do I implement it for podcasts? So with my CRM, I am managing contacts and I'm managing my clients. I am managing media. So I have podcasts as a part of media. So when I do outreach and I find like contacts or certain podcasts, I add them to my CRM. I set up like a flow for the podcasts, my communication with them, what happened as a result, etc. So I really do believe that if you want to do podcasts, one of the first things you can do is to find a way that you can best manage your podcast outreach and the benefits that you will get from podcasts, especially when you get on a podcast, and kind of add that into your systems and processes, your whole podcast flow and podcast opportunity, your podcast media, etc. So I do that as well right now. I add the podcast to me is part of media. So I add it there and it has its own little separate thing. And if you really want to grow and use podcasts, have a really good follow-up system and, for your podcast contacts, etc. And have a really good tracking system to track the podcasts that you're getting covered on, etc.
Yeah.
But add podcasts into your system and your infrastructure. That will really help you to manage the benefits of what podcast has to offer.
I think you're spot on. I think there is. So the thing about podcasts is that it's a human-based channel, right? It's literally having conversations with real humans, although we are thousands of miles away from each other. But
Yes.
that's what podcast is about. But in the back end, there is so much that can be automated and also optimized, right? For the guests to receive a pre-brief page, one pager, reminders to come on the show on the guest sides, to remember when to prepare, to know what to do, to get the assets shared, to get them published automatically on the different platforms and so on. There is so much to be done in the back end that will, like everything, it's not one silver bullet. It's 1,000 golden BBs through infrastructure and systems that will make the podcast successful. I think you've nailed it perfectly. Like automating as much as possible is the key to that.
You have to automate as much as possible because business doesn't work the way there's still some things that are just there structurally are the same principles and things like that. But the way people are going about business now, as opposed to 10 years ago, is completely different. And if you don't get with the program, you're going to be left behind. So automation is your friend.
Amor, there is a question that I ask all my guests at the end of those interviews. which is based on Jeff Bezos, actually. Jeff Bezos, when he was building Amazon, right, he was asking himself, he wasn't trying to project, okay, what's going to be the next innovation, what's going to change in 10 years, what's going to be, the next big thing. But rather, he was asking himself, what's still going to be true in 10 years that is true now? People are still going to want fast delivery. They're still going to want great customer service, and they're still going to want plenty of choices, ideally at a low price. He made this bet, and Amazon is today what Amazon is. My tweak to this question to you is, what is true today in PR that is still going to be true in 10 years that people should double down on today?
Wow, what is true today? It is true today that your story matters. People love stories, they like journeys. And if you can really strategically implement that into your business and what you do on a day basis, find out the best way for you to tell and share your story that will attract audiences and make people want to listen and do business with you. That is true today, and it was true when we first started. If I look back at how PR all started and the godfather of PR, Edward Bernays, and all those people, they were really good at storytelling. And storytelling is not going to go away, so you just need to get better at it, find more clever ways to do it. And the Jeff Bezos, I love Jeff Bezos. I love what he has built. I think he's a great example of someone who found a way to solve a massive problem for the world, right? We wanted packages, we wanted to get anything we wanted to get on this one website. Like you could buy a car on Amazon or you can buy vitamins, right?
Can
And
you buy a
you,
car on Amazon? I didn't even know that.
you can, yeah. And I've heard people say it. I haven't tried it, but I think you can. It could just be like a big contrast, right? That you can buy
Yeah.
anything on Amazon. So I would say that Amazon does a really good job at telling their story. And Jeff Bezos was a, great architect in creating a service that solved problems for the world. People wanted to buy anything that they wanted to buy at any time of the day, and they wanted it tomorrow. Or in some cases now, they want it in 2 hours, right? And Amazon does just that. So he solves a problem. That's why he's worth what he's worth, because he's solving a problem that society wants. You build and grow based on the problems you're solving. If you really want to get successful in this world, find a problem to solve and solve it good. And he's a great problem solver.
I love that. Amor, I think that was an absolute PR masterclass here. If people want to find out more about you, look at what you do, where should they go?
You can find me on LinkedIn /Amore Philip. You can also find me on Instagram at the iconic Amore. And then you can visit our website, I'm saying www dot, tell you how old I am,
That works.
AOPRLLC.com. My mom does that. She goes, go to www. But yeah, so you can just go online, AOPRLLC.com. You could find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on some of my recent commentary on Forbes Advisor, Inc. magazine, and Fast Company as well, where I comment and help journalists solve problems by contributing my expertise.
We'll put all the links in the description. Amor, thank you so much for coming on Podcast Gurus.
Thank you, Julia, for having me.